Okay, and welcome everyone. Okay, I'm gonna check a little bit for reactions. If everything is all right. If everyone can hear me well. And oh yeah, and I should actually I should have done this before. Nah, I think it's good. Okay, perfect. So this is the second part of the set dressing stream. Ooh. It doesn't actually stream smoothly right now. I hope that everything is all right. Can everyone hear me well? Okay, I'm going to keep this running and see how it goes. So, sorry. So, last time there were a bit of issues with with Blender while I was streaming, but generally I went over in the first part of how to create the file in general and start like importing the layout as a reference and all the individual assets that we need for the set to work. Since then, it's been a week and I worked a bit more on the set. So this is the current version. So this is just the render view right now. I can just switch back to this view as well. So this is the set. I wish I could like show how it looked like last week. Well, I could collapse all of these collections and just hide individual parts. I think it looked more like something like this. I think that's somewhat what I had last week. So where I left off was kind of that I like created the general collections of like everything that we need in the set, and also 2 different scenes. So I can very easily check out, okay, I have the, let's see, hold on. I actually need to enable some toggles over here, sorry. Let's see. Okay, I actually have the layout over here with this shot and all the characters in it, but I can also really quickly move to a different shot and have different characters and a different layout version in this one. So something like this. Like this. And then just play. I also see your first question. How long is the stream going to be? I usually keep it around 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Maybe it's going to be a bit longer. I'll see. But that is generally how long. But yes, this is the setup. I'm also going to turn on music now. Perfect. Okay, so I'm actually going to add a timeline to this workspace over here. So I could just go split this, add a timeline like that. That should be good. And then I can at least scrub in the timeline easily. So this is one shot that is currently really important in the beginning of the movie. And then I can just switch to a different scene. And this scene is basically sharing a lot of the same collections. This set collection over here, where the entire set is in. It's essentially just linked between these 2 scenes. So it's using all the same assets. Then I have a second collection over here, which is just called props. These are these 2 props, which I was working on at the same time, which will have a bit more interaction with the characters. So they are walking over this one, and it's going to bend a bit and give. And this one has like one of the branches which character will eventually interact with. But then I have the characters themselves. So this is currently over here the characters log bridge collection. One of the characters I hid because it was a bit broken. But if I would go to a different scene now, in here I have also the log bridge collection and the props. but the third collection has actually just one character with a different animation because it's from a different file. And then the fourth collection is really just the layout, which is the kind of crudely modeled version of the set from Hjalti, but which gives me a really good reference of the composition and also the camera, which I can link in its own collection. And that one just gives me a really good idea of the framing. And this is a perfect starting point from where I can build the set. I see a question, how do you pass between shots that fast? So, I mean, this is just really with these two scenes. But what I also want to do is I want to like quickly open up another set file on the side, which is a bit more complicated, but so in the directory, in the working directory, we have the library, which just has all the asset files in there, like the lighting setup, props, sets, pose library, characters, cameras, and so on and so forth. But I'm going to go into the sets and then the sprite village. So this one is a bit more complicated. It has many more shots, and I'm also going to use it a bit as a reference for set dressing right now. So I'm going to get back to that question, how do you pass between shots that fast? Because there's an interesting answer. Another question, does each scene render individually? Yes, but you can also in the compositor set it up that multiple scenes can render one after another. I think there's a special node for that. There's another question. I'm finding it hard to start modeling sculpting in Blender. Well, there's plenty of tutorials for that. And I think for modeling and sculpting, I can at least really recommend the Blender 2.8 Fundamentals series. That one gives you a really good start into especially modeling and like the general functionality of Blender. What is exactly happening here? Someone asks. Well, I am going a bit over a production file, of the new upcoming Blender open movie called Sprite Fright, and I want to give a bit of an introduction, or at least an overview, not really an introduction, of how what I'm just currently working on, and maybe especially answer your questions and see if this can help you out. Yes, another question, and honestly I still don't understand how you use a drawing tablet completely in Blender, like without a physical keyboard. I'm actually I am using a keyboard. I am using a drawing tablet instead of a mouse most of the time, but Blender is not really useful without a keyboard. You need a keyboard. Blender is very shortcut heavy, so maybe it could change at some point, or at least in the way that if you don't have a keyboard, you can also use Blender, but for now, it's actually really required. Welcome. Nice of you to join us, Falk. Okay, so this set will actually load a bit in the background. The set files are actually pretty heavy. They need to load in a lot of different assets, which takes a bit of time. But in the meantime, I can continue a bit. So this was the layout, and the models are all really simple. One of the things I actually did, which I didn't really go into in the last stream, is that once I had this linked in, like you can see in the outliner over here, that these collections actually are linked from another file. That is just the difference between linking in a collection or appending it. Appending means it will become completely local in that file, and you can just edit it and do any changes you want. But if something is linked, you cannot actually change it. Like for example, this log over here, which was used in the layout, I can't move it. The only thing I can really do is hide it. And that's it. But because it is linked, all of the data blocks that are tied to this, like for example, if I go in here, Like you can see the object data is grayed out because it's linked. I can't make any changes to anything that is in here. And that is useful because then you can like rely on different files for certain content. You can just kind of reference it in and have it as a reference. But one of the features that we're testing right now for this current production are overrides, specifically library overrides. So what I did, for example, with all of this, which I linked in, is I added a library override to this. So that is just a thing that you can do like in the outliner over here. I can right click on something and then ID data and say make library override. And you can actually notice it right here. This little link icon means it is linked, and a link icon with an arrow going through it means it's overridden. Here's what an override does. It lets you actually change things. So the log here is not overridden, but all of these parts, these ones over here, they have overrides on them. So I can actually go in and actually change anything that I want, because it will just add a specific override. Like if I move, like I can just show you this object over here, which has like library overrides in it. If I start moving it, it actually, let's see, here we go. Library overrides. It actually starts adding overrides to it. Location and rotation. If I start scaling it, it will add a scale override, and it will just keep doing that for any changes that I do. And it makes it really freeing to work with linked assets. Of course, it is still in development right now, which makes it a bit prone to bugs and a little bit of performance issues, but it's being worked at. But it's already working wonderfully. But this is basically what I got for now. I took parts of the layout over here, like the ground, and edited it further. So I can just like quickly hide this. So this was just modeled a bit more on top of it, and I can just actually go through the set a bit one by one. So I got the ground. Hold on. Yeah, there we go. It's just the ground geometry. It is a bit different from the layout, but the general composition is still pretty much the same. By the way, I'm switching between collections really easily. Like I set it up that I have in the first collection the set, the second collection the props, third I have the characters, and fourth I have the layout, 5 camera, 7 I have my temporary lights and all that. And that is just by using the number keys. I can just really quickly switch between them. I'm gonna answer a couple questions. How do you get audio while scrubbing in the rain rig? Sorry. Well, if you add an audio strip to the video sequence editor, it should play it in the background, but I'm not that familiar with it, sorry. How animation goes on? Well, the animation is also in full, in full production, if that's what you mean, for Sprite Fright, and it's happening side by side with set creation, which is actually the reason why I need to really work on sets right now, because they are absolutely needed very soon for animation. How do you make the final mesh look smooth in Final Render Subdivision Surface Modifier? Yes, usually for the final smoothing, it's good to add another subdivision surface modifier on the objects if needed. And that will just increase the render quality. But especially if you also need to add some extra displacement, you need more resolution. When you're working on a large scene like this, do you append all assets to one huge file, or is there another way? Is that what linking is? Just got here, sorry. No worries. Most, or almost all of what you can see right now in this set is linked in. So the grass is linked in, the moss is it's using linked assets as well. These ferns over here, those are linked assets from the plants file. The bushes over here are from the bushes file. And essentially what I did last stream is before I really get into set dressing, I start to just link in all the different assets. So I just go from, let's see. I just go from file to file and just link in all of these collections, which we have named like EN branches or EN bushes, EN fungi. Like if anything would be missing here, I could just like click on the libraries collection and I can just go to link. I go a bit up, library, and then I, for example, here have env for environment assets. And in here I could like go to rocks or trees. Like I could go like to the moon, then in collections, and here's EN moon, which is the asset. And make sure that instance collections is on, because then that will link in the moon asset as an instance, which I can really easily move around. So this would be really high in the sky. But I don't need the moon right now. I can just delete it. Usually all of these, I just hide them for the viewport and just exclude the collections. And if I then need to actually, let's see, like let's say I have the ground and I need to add a tree, I can just go into like the trees collection over here, just click on it, then anything I add will be added to that collection. I set the 3D cursor to that location, Shift A, collection instance, and then I could search for oak. And then I can just like, wait, actually, those were called trunk, EN oak trunk, and then I can just like select any one of these, and and there we have it. And then I can move this one around further. And this is just an instance, so a single object which essentially contains an entire collection in it. Like this is the instance, and it has the EN oak trunk 1 collection in it, which is linked. But the instance lets me just easily place it somewhere, move it around, and it's just linked in from another file, which just makes it really the set file itself kind of light. So this is how I kind of started to add all of these oak trees. Like I could just at least remove some of these branches and all of that stuff. Let's see. Okay, so this is how I added all of these oak trees. These specifically, I even made local. Like so I can actually edit them in edit mode, on sculpt mode further, so I can define their shape a bit more in detail. And all of these different oak collections over here have the trunk itself, like this one also has this extra root, and then also some extra branches. And so on and so forth. I'm going to get into all of that a bit more. Then I added some more trees, but these are just really just linked in. Then it actually goes more into the branches. The branches are also just assets that I linked in, which are really just like you got these small twigs tied to like, it's actually exactly the same branch models that we used in Spring. To save some time, we just recycled some old models, which still hold up fairly well, especially from a distance. But these can then, let's see, these can then be mixed with the treetops over here. So this is an entirely its own collection that is just scattering leaves on the entire thing. Part of it is this object over here, and for these we are using geometry nodes to scatter assets. We're not using particle systems anymore. The only area where we're actually using particle systems is for the hair, but for scattering assets in the sets we're using geometry nodes. So I can't really go much into like how we're using them, except that, I mean, it's replacing the particles. It's just checking where the branches are in this case, and then scattering leaves on them. This is unfortunately not really a tutorial for how this works, sorry. But the same is really the case for this. This is just an icosphere, I think it used to be. Yeah, and then there's a displacement modifier on top, which just adds this irregularity to the shape, and then it uses the surface to scatter leaves and replaces it with them. So this way, you can fairly easily, fairly quickly, hold on. I'm going to go into the camera view. Let's see. So for example, with this tree over here in the distance, god damn it, come on. So it's using these extra leaves over here on the branches, and then this sphere over here, which gets replaced with a lot of more leaves, and then you essentially get something that looks pretty cartoony. It is really just like this object over here is really just scattering a point cloud along the surface and replacing all of those points with leaves, which are also linked in from another file. So let's see. If you want to learn more about geometry nodes, I mean, there's plenty of tutorials online, especially since it's such a new feature and everyone is pretty excited about it. I hope there's going to be some breakdowns on how we use it in the film. But it is really, if you know a bit about geometry nodes, it's actually fairly rudimentary what we're doing with them for the scattering. This was the main use case for it. Pretty much the same thing for the grass. It's just taking the surface of all of this and scattering grass on it. But I also want to go over the chat a little bit. Okay, hold on. See some more questions. Do you render each collection individually? No. They are all part of the same render, but some collections are not included in the render. How to link files? It is really just you click on link, and then you can select individual objects or collections, anything from another file, and it will be added to your current file. Does Blender support Mocap suits? Yes. There are tracking features, so that's definitely possible. Does linking also affect render speed? Guess not. No, it doesn't really. It, if anything, affects the file size because the assets are actually coming from somewhere else, from another file. I don't think it's possible to have all of these assets in the set file locally. That's going to just result in insanely huge files. But what does affect render speeds, or at least memory consumption, is that all of these leaves, it's just 4 different or 5 different leaves, and they're all just like instanced all over the place, and that means the render engine really just takes 5 leaves into account, and all the rest is just very efficient. Like it doesn't render, or it doesn't have hundreds of leaves in memory, it only has 5 in memory. How is the work divided in teams? I see someone ask. Well, I mean, we have different tasks that need to happen. It's like right now, like I'm working on the sets. Andy is taking care of a lot of the lighting and also just in general, like lots of work related to the production. There's Simon who's doing a lot of the shading and note work for the production, and Bo, who is also working as a general artist right now on the props. So right now, like everyone is kind of working in their own area, and things need to be kind of like done in order, so nothing really gets held up. Like for example, the set needs to be done in some state so the animators can use it to animate, but we're not really stepping on each other's toes. Work is fairly well divided. What's the release date? Around Halloween. How do you generate a great story for animated movie? Ooh, maybe you want to check out some of the blog posts on the cloud. Matthew, our director, has been very happy about just sharing some insights in interviews. That should be pretty useful. Okay, but getting back into this, I hope the other set is actually open now. Yes. Okay, perfect. So this is also a fairly big set. Not even everything is visible right now. But one thing that is different in this set is there's many more cameras that we're cycling through. And you can actually link a camera to markers over here. So whenever a the timeline surpasses a certain marker, it switches to a certain camera. So that makes it really easy to work in a specific set, or like multiple shots, and just have them all in one file. But I don't want to show too much of this scene. I will be stealing some of the assets from here later on though, because if I look below the ground, there's actually all of these assets still neatly aligned, and I can just copy them from here. So anyway, I'm going back over here. There's actually a lot of assets already scattered around, the branches and all of that stuff, the ferns, the bushes. And the way I did that is, I mean, I could just go into a different workspace over here. So one of the assets I still need to scatter around are mushrooms. So you just use workspaces as like different layouts for different tasks, so I can quickly switch between them. In this case, I'm just like going to the set dressing workspace, which I have made, and in here I have this little editor up here, which is really just showing all the mushrooms. Like it is really just the mushrooms down here, all the way down in the chasm. And I just selected all of these, selected all of these, and then put them into local view, so I really just see these. Here I have a camera view, and then over here I have a bigger 3D viewport, which I can use for scattering the assets. I'm gonna hide some of the collections, like the treetops. I don't need to see them right now, the moss and the branches. Let's see. I don't need to see this. But I want to scatter some of the mushrooms. So what I would like to do here is I want to enable snapping. And then I can, if project individual elements is off, if I just select one of the mushrooms over here, let's just pick this one, and zoom in here. I want to have some hints of mushrooms over here. They shouldn't be on the main path, but really just on the side of it, kind of as a hint of what's to come. So I can just select one of these here and duplicate it with Shift D, and then I can place it around. This will be a lot easier once we have the asset manager, but until then, this is kind of the way to go. So you can like place a hint of a mushroom right here, select another one, duplicate, place it here. And really just keep going like this. So yeah, I'm just gonna also place them over here into little groups. I also have these flat ones. Like there's plenty of variations that we've made, and they are really handy. Like we got these flat ones, we got the tall ones, we got the long ones. They can be kind of grouped together to look nice. But yeah, I'm actually going to get rid of this one. The tweak tool is also really nice for this, just to move stuff around really quickly. And then I can just place these wherever I need them. And so this continues essentially. Like I can just place some more. Actually, they're actually fairly small. Okay. I can just kind of group them into little spots. Like that. Exactly. Okay. And I also want to. Actually, I think I'm doing a bit too much in terms of we don't want many toadstools in this environment, so I'm going to dial this down actually a bit more to have less of them. And there's actually other mushrooms which I can scatter as well. So unfortunately I don't have them in this file yet. These are all the assets that I actually scattered so far. So I actually need to get them from somewhere else. And turns out they are not in here either. So what I'm going to do is I will go into another set file. I know that they are in the U tree set file, so I can open this on the side. In the meantime, I can answer some more questions. For what are you using geometry nodes in Sprite Fright? Mainly for scattering stuff, like leaves and like anything that would be too much manual effort to place by hand. Leaves, grass, individual flowers, moss, that sort of stuff. How do I save my hotkeys as a file that can be used in many computers in different versions of Blender? Well, saving and sharing key configurations is a bit difficult right now, but what you can do is there's an add-on on the Blender Cloud where you can save your key map preferences online and download them anywhere on any machine, and that should make it pretty easy. Should be pretty much you should be pretty much able to find it on the homepage on the Blender Cloud, or at least a link to it. And there's also the question: is this film 100% Blender, or are you using some extra software too? Whatever software we use is open source, so we are using mostly Blender. So all the 3D assets are made in Blender, and the video editing as well, and eventually also the color grading. There is extra 2D work done in Krita and Inkscape, and that's pretty much like the most typical software. There's also plenty more open source software related to the production, but these are the main ones. Anyway, let's see. Where are the mushrooms? Yes, okay. I think I have them here. Yeah, these are the ones that I need. We also have the ink caps, which are kind of cute. They're like pink. And we have these ones, and they are the ones that I want. They are the clouded agaric. So I can just... These are also linked in from the fungi file. And what I can do is I can just select them, Ctrl-C, copy objects. And now if I go back into this file, I can like go into the plants and then I'm just gonna call this clouded, and then paste them in with Ctrl-V. Now it says 7 objects pasted, so I can just select them over here. So copy and pasting works from in between blend files as well, if you have them open at the same time. So now I have them right here where I want them to be. I can just put them next to the toadstools, like that. I can frame them over here, put this into local view, so I can really quickly choose between them. Now, and this is pretty much the same thing I did for all the other assets, like the bushes and the ferns. I can just pick them here, right here, and then just duplicate them and move them around. So these are actually pretty small, to be honest. Let's see. Wow, yeah, they are actually pretty tiny. It's something that we didn't quite consider, I think. Like, we wanted to especially scatter more of these mushrooms around. Not just the toadstools. The toadstools are very aggressively red and very easy to recognize, but they are also much more meant for other sets. But yes, I can just like group these together over here, and also have a couple more over here. There we go. I can just leave it like that for now. I think this is kind of nice. But there's also other tasks, like I'm gonna bring the branches back and the treetops collection. So one of the things, if I look at the render view, there is more need of not necessarily branches, but I can see some issues here. Like this branch just kind of goes nowhere and it's just capping off. Same thing over here in the back. And there are, like, there's this part over here, which is really just a bunch of leaves floating in nowhere. So I would like to address that. So for that I can go back into the set dressing workspace. And I guess it's actually this, which is the free floating part. What I would like to do here is just increase the density. Right now the density of leaves, if I enable it, is just 30. So if I change this to, for example, 80, it is suddenly becoming much more dense. And I would also like to, okay, disable snapping and move this a bit further to the back. There we go. Question is, can I see anywhere through the forest? Kinda here, but I think it's fine. Oh, this is frozen. Anyway, are there any more questions? When will Cycles X be officially released? I'm very excited for that. It is planned to be already in 3.0, but that's still some way ahead in time. So don't expect it anytime soon. There's still quite a bit of work to be done. How do you make leaves with spheres like you? Well, that is with the geometry node setup. Maybe I can actually go into this for a moment. So I have this geometry node set up. So first off, there's like the sphere, which is like displaced with a displacement modifier and just a texture. And then geometry nodes on top of that, which basically just replaces the sphere and changes it with a lot of leaves. Like a lot. There we go. So all of these inputs that are exposed over here are really just plugged in from over here. So it's the collection that is used. The density, viewport visibility, randomness. And so it's taking the collection. If nothing is given, it seems to just take the... No, it's just mixing this collection with the current geometry, like joining it together. So it's taking the geometry, then it scatters points across the surface, seemingly, and then for the density it uses a vertex group called leaves. So over here, if I go into weight paint, yeah, it's just red. That just means it uses the same amount of density across the entire surface. Then what does it do? It subtracts. Yeah, this is like it's a lot of math. Like I am also still getting into geometry nodes, but apparently it seems to take the it seems to figure out the direction of the surface over here, and then uses that direction to align the rotation of the leaves according to the surface direction, with a little bit of randomness, which is probably defined over here. There's like, yeah, and then eventually it uses those points to just use the point instance node, and that just means it replaces all of the points, which at that point have like a specific location and a rotation, and replaces them with any leaf from this collection, which is linked in. It's actually not that complicated of a node setup, but it is already a bit of a hurdle to get into geometry nodes. So I'm not very confident with explaining exactly how it works. Anyway, I wanted to add branches. So most of this is actually pretty fine, but again, there's this branch over here, which just kind of goes nowhere. So I would like to fix this, specifically actually by just... yeah, I just want this to move out of the way, to be honest. I still want to keep that branch, but I'm just going to go into sculpt mode and, oops, let's see. I'm actually going to expand a facet over here with Shift W, like that. And then I can use, then I can auto mask it by facets. So only the facet moves in sculpt mode. I can also use the pose brush to, let's see. Yeah, to target facets. And then I can just, come on. And then I can just rotate and scale this out of the way. And now it's not as obvious that this is, like, it's just ending there. This won't work from every angle, but for this specific shot, it's fine. But let's just go in a bit further. So I can select, okay, so I can already see I have this tree selected, and it lights up this icon over here, which means the selected mesh is actually part of this collection. I can select this collection over here, which is the collection of its branches, right here, which are also just instances from a linked collection from another file. But I can add some more. So I can just set the 3D cursor here, Shift A, collection instance, and then I can look for branch. Actually, branch.small. Yeah, it's clever enough to recognize what I mean. Branch small, and I can just copy this because I'm going to do this multiple times. I can add a branch small.01 and rotate it in a direction that I want, like that. And I want to add another one over here. I can paste the same thing in and add a branch dot, like the second version of those branches. And this one is now kind of clipping into this one. That's not great, but I want to see this from the camera perspective. Yeah. Let's see. Just want to kind of align this well. Well, the great thing is the way I set up the geometry nodes is that anything in this collection, like if in the treetops, there's branches over here, and this is the oak 4, so I can just select this like this object, and it has a geometry node set up that looks specifically for the oak 4 branches, and then it starts to scatter leaves on it. How that geometry node setup works exactly, I assume it takes a specific vertex group from all of these different twigs and branches, and then spawns points on those, and then afterwards replaces those points with these leaves. The orientation is actually based on the center of the object, so I can just move that around. But now I have some more leaves over here, so this is already looking much better. I can just also hide this collection again. This is not like a tutorial, but it kind of gives you an impression of how we actually use this right now in the production. If you want tutorials, there's some, like for geometry nodes, there's general tutorials online on YouTube. But also at some point soon, we're going to make some breakdown videos explaining exactly how we did this. I'm sure of that. Some more questions. How did you make the bushes? Well, the bushes were not made by me. I assume they're made by Andy Goralczyk or Simon Thomas, but they're using a very similar principle. They have these branches down here, which are also, funnily enough, the same branches from the trees of spring, just with a couple more added on top. And then it's spawning leaves in the same way it was spawning leaves on the branches of the trees. And then this little canopy over here is then also going to be replaced with a bunch of scattered leaves, so that it looks, in the end, much more lush like these ones. So in the viewport it's showing less leaves, but that's just to make the performance nicer. Some more questions. Why don't you use geometry nodes to scatter mushrooms and foliage? Well, foliage, yes. I am using geometry nodes to add like general foliage like grass, moss, little flowers, but bigger mushrooms or flowers, which should be arranged in a very specific way. Right now it's still a bit more beneficial to do that by hand. I also don't want there to be many mushrooms. I just wanted to add a few here and group them in a specific way how I want them to be grouped. And that's just easier to do by hand. It's just faster. Geometry nodes can really save time if it would be too much work to do it manually. But let's see. The moss is also really just working the same way. It's just an object that checks for a specific vertex group in a collection. So in that collection right now, it's checking, okay, what's in the collection Oak 1. So in the Oak 1 we have this trunk over here and these branches. And all of these branches have a vertex group called moss, and that defines where the moss should spawn. And then it's really taking the location of that moss, the orientation of the geometry, and scatters these meshes. And then later on, once it starts rendering, it actually scatters little points on it, like this. But this is quite heavy, like you can see, so I actually have it off by default. Let's see. I actually had, right, so there's like in general some stuff that I need to do. Like, let's see. I need to check on the other shot. This one right here. Beginning. Yeah, beginning. I can go into the camera perspective and actually show the set itself. Like, here we go. Okay, there's Ellie. So, if I want... Oh, there's actually mushrooms visible over here. I don't want that. So I'm going to delete them. So, there's a bunch of to-dos over here. If I wanted to, I can at least render this for now. The path doesn't lead that far into the background. I need to extend it. And in general, the forest could be a bit more lush. So, oh, it just crashed. Probably because I have a different set file open at the same time. So I'm going to close that one. Open the log bridge. In the meantime, if anyone has more questions, I am happy to answer them. Oh my god. Someone just said, like, there's no reference to my name in the video. Yeah, I actually didn't add it in the description. That's true. I'm going to actually add it to the description. Okay, I'm gonna save this. Okay, I added it to the description, so thank you very much. Which is the version of the project? Ooh. So, just the latest master, so the 3.0 alpha. And I also see Falcus answering some questions. That's very helpful, thank you. In the meantime, I'm gonna drink something. Someone is asking, is this Blender, is this channel official? Yes. It is not tied to the Blender Foundation, but to the Blender Studio, which is in general working on the movies and testing Blender, and in that way contributing to the development. It's a bit confusing. There's like 3 aspects to Blender, which is the Foundation, the Institute, and the Studio. The Foundation is really more the the management part of it. Let's see. Man. Yeah, I wish the files would load faster because yeah, it's taken quite a bit of time, but I understand why. It is really loading a lot of assets. Anyway, in the meantime, like, I still have this render of this shot, and I kind of put in some like general like temporary lights, and I overrid. I was overriding all of the materials in the scene with just a simple gray material. This way, I can just see the models a bit more clearly. But yes, this shot still needs a bit of work. I also still need to like, if you look into the distance, it just starts to thin out, so the forest needs to be a bit more lush. The road into the forest is also still looks way too like it's being used regularly, but it's supposed to actually be very thick but still have that tunnel feeling. Then the cliff, I still need to change that and make the like grass and moss setup finished. And then once I have all the assets scattered around and it looks generally good, I'm going to go in and finally re-enable the materials and fix the UVs, because I was remodeling some of these tree trunks quite a bit and the UVs are going to be messed up. Not just the UVs, but also some vertex groups and vertex colors, and they are very necessary for the materials, but also for the scattering of the moss, for example. Some more questions. Will Sprite Fright be rendered in cycles? Yes. There was at some point discussions on if we want to do it in Eevee, but we decided against it. How old are you? I'm 25. Could you share the tree wireframe? Oh, I'm going to do that once the file is actually open. There we go. Are you going to add mist to the final render? Yes. There is going to be mist, like especially if you look at this shot. We still need to add hold on, we still need to add a background forest, because this is not an endless pit. There's supposed to be a horizon line and stuff like that. But that is going to be a bit more hidden in the background with a bit of mist in it. So, and especially in the night scenes of the film, we use a lot of volumetrics for mist. Is the grass geometry nodes or particles? Geometry nodes. We don't use particles anymore except for hair. And I don't think we will ever go back to using particles. Geometry nodes do the same pretty much and have much more functionality. And they will, I think, very likely at some point replace the old particle system. Once it's finished. Like, it's a big project. Thanks for streaming so much lately. Will compositing for the film be done completely in Blender? What about sound design? Sound design, not necessarily. That's going to be a different task, but compositing, yes. Very likely. Will there be a character animation stream? Maybe. That would be nice. Anyway, I wanted to show the wireframes of the trees, so here you go. They're actually pretty, like, simply modeled. And then smoothed afterwards. Like, I can also just, like, isolate this one, and you can see it is just... some of the geometry is, like, duplicated for different trees and then just morphed into a different tree. But this is basically it. And I can also show over here, if I go to weight paint mode, you can see the... hold on. The vertex group called moss, and here you can here you can see that, like, here's wherever the moss will be scattered. So if I bring back the moss, there we go. It's not exact, but the moss is also thinking a bit about the direction of, like, where the surface is pointing and where moss should be. Anyway, I was going to do something. I want to extend the floor a bit. It doesn't go very far, and I think I can do that very easily by just extruding it a bit further. Like that. Oh, why do I have proportional editing enabled? Okay. Like this. And then I can just add a couple more loops just like that. Should be fine. Okay. Now along that ground, I don't think I need to extend it any further, but along that ground I can add some more trees. So for that, let me actually just get rid of the treetops. I want to see a bit more. So branches can be disabled, the props as well, Ellie as well. I just do that with the number keys. How are you learning geometry nodes? I see someone ask. I think there's some really good tutorials online. Right now there's nothing official, but there's plenty of people who are interested enough to make tutorials. How to make mist in Blender? Well, there's various ways. You can just use the the camera depth to composite mist on top, or you can actually use an object that has a volumetric material. When did you start learning 3D in general? I think about like 10 years ago. Anyway, how is the moss a model, or how's the moss modeled? The moss is really just generated. It is really just scattering like spheres and then remeshing them with the voxel remesher. And then using that as an emitter for the actual moss particles. I see another question. I have no information about 3D animation and how it is done. Is it similar to 2D animation? Not really. I would say 3D animation is in some way a bit more technical, but I mean 2D animation is also technical. There's quite a bit of differences. I think the main one is probably interpolation, so that you in 3D animation you can actually have frames be generated, a movement be generated in between keyframes. In 2D animation you generally, well, it depends on the tool, but if you just draw everything, you need to draw every frame. There's not a lot of automation. Well, there's plenty more differences, but I'm maybe also not the best person to ask about that. Anyway, again, I have the set dressing workspace, and in here I can really just go in and turn on snapping, select bushes over here and then duplicate them and place them around here. I want to figure out where it makes the most sense. Let's see. I want this path to look a bit more closed. Like this. Like it can continue a bit more, or it will, but it is not a human-made path. This is a path that will extend for a bit, but then they might need to find a different direction. Same thing pretty much for the trees. I'm going to, but in this case, really just let's see. Yeah, I'm going to select the more trees collection over here, and then I'm just going to add more trees. So collection instance, trunk 1. Let's see. Like that. And then another one over here, trunk, and then let's pick the trunk 9. How does that one look? Yeah, that one might actually be nice. Bit smaller, so it gives a bit more of a perception of depth. That is actually pretty nice. And then eventually what we do for the far background of the set is we're going to have an environment asset, which is really just a patch of wood. And that's going to be scattered in the far distance, so it's not going to be that detailed, but it will give enough of an impression of a deep forest, and it will probably also be less demanding on the memory. Anyway, but now I added 2 more collections in here, 2 more trees in here, and these I need to add into background tree collections. So I have a background oak .015 and a background oak 16. So I can just place these into their own collections over here. So they're nice and sorted. There's also, I think, still a couple of gaps in here. And also this tree still needs to have branches. So, but I think in general the amount of trees is fine. The rest will really just be that far distance tree, like far distant forest asset that we will add. But I will bring the branches back. Let's see. This is the tree, and this one needs branches. So I'm going to add a collection over here. Let's see. I called this, okay, really just background oak.001. That's the one, okay. And then dot branches. I think that was how I called it. Underscore branches. So in here, if I have that one selected, I can just start adding branches to this tree. So Shift A, collection instance, branch dot medium. Yeah, kind of like that. And then I'm going to scatter some more over here. I'm going to add the 3, which is quite a lot bigger. Also, I'm going to disable snapping. Go. And it's really just about like adding these to this. Let's see. I also want to add a branch over here. This is just going to be the 2. Really simply put. And then, okay. I want to add leaves for this collection that I just created, so I can just re-enable the treetops. And in here I have collections for, I have objects for this. I can duplicate one of them. This I'm just going to rename to, let's see. Yeah, Geo Oak 001 leaves branches, and then specifically plug in this collection of branches and it will scatter leaves on it. There we go. And now this should be filled in a bit more. Let's see. That should be good. I think that should be enough for that tree at least. But I also still need some branches on these trees over here. So it's pretty much the same story right there. I will need to add a collection over here, which is just the same name, but then with branches. And in there, oh, wait. Hold on. This one? Yes, that one needs branches. And these two need branches. Interesting. Okay, underscore branches. There we go. So, yeah, specifically these 3 trees still need branches. So, let's see. This one, yeah, right over here, I can add a branch. I think. Actually, I'm backpedaling on this. This one doesn't need branches. I'm going to close this. And instead I'm going to focus on these because they will give more of an impression of far away branches. So, branches. Oh, oops. Wrong collections. So, what am I missing? Yeah, branch medium. There we go. Oh, oops. Come on. Yeah, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to add this collection over here, the version 8. And then over here, 2. It's a lot of the same branches over and over again, but they are not that recognizable as the same ones. So it should be fine. Let's see. As long as I can still get that tunnel feeling, that would be nice. Also, these don't belong to that collection, they belong in this one. Now, oak 16 and 15 need leaves. So I'm going to duplicate this, rename this to oak. Oh, come on. 15. Just so it all doesn't get lost. Oh, 15 branches. There we go. Oh, and a thing that I actually forgot is... Let's actually go to the 001. Yes. So the leaves object is taking the origin as the orientation for in which direction the leaves are pointing. So right now this one is pointing, these leaves are all pointing to a different tree. I need to actually get this origin over to this tree where it belongs. Now it's aligned the correct way. Same thing over here, these leaves are all pointing towards this point. And I want them to point towards the center of this tree. So I'm just going to set the cursor here and then move the selection to the cursor. And that's how I can very easily snap them to that spot. Actually, that's the wrong spot. They need to point in this direction. Now, I can duplicate this, rename it to 16. take the 16 oak 16 branches and point here, and there we go. Now these branches also have, oh come on. Now they also have leaves, and I can still move them around and it will just dynamically update the leaves. That's very helpful. Perfect. What about this one? I'm gonna bring back the treetops and see what happens. And I will also really quickly render this out just to see how it looks. So I could just press F12. It will just... Oh, hold on. Escape. I haven't updated the render settings in this scene. Okay, one moment. I want this to be just 80 samples. I don't need a denoising for this, and I just want it to be 80% of the resolution. And render. In that case, I can really quickly look at the chat. What is character blocking? I see someone ask. Well, it's not really part of this stream, but I mean, blocking out anything is really just basically the starting point. You start out by creating the general proportions and shapes that you need, and anything that is necessary as a starting point to sell the character, but also give you an impression of the scale, the proportions, that sort of thing, the colors, maybe even. Like when I was looking at the layout, hold on. Why is it not using the GPU? I do not understand this. Yeah, now it should use it. Then it will render a bit faster. Yeah, but I mean, I was showing the original layout of the set, not in this one, but that is also just like blocking out all the necessary grounds and like trees and everything that will be visible in the set without actually having the final assets. Some more questions. How can one import the graphics of the models like GTA 5? Do these require serious detailing, and how to convert your animation to MP4? Well, I mean, I don't honestly know where to get the assets from a game, but I'm sure there's some people who have them floating around online. How to convert your animation to MP4? Well, there's plenty of programs that let you convert video files, even online. If you just search for convert.mov to .mp4, you will find a way to very quickly and easily convert a video if you don't have the tools. What does the tweak tool do? I see someone ask. It essentially lets you select something and move it basically at the same time. So you just click on anything and then you will start moving it. It's very convenient in certain cases. My Blender is not working. It's warped and distorted. Well, that doesn't sound good. Yeah, if there's any problems with Blender, I can recommend just like usually loading factory settings. Maybe that will help, or yeah, I mean that usually helps a lot. Anyway, this is the render. I kind of like what's going on over here. I think I'm going to add a couple more. Nah, I don't need more treetops over here, so, like more canopies filled with leaves, because it's just adding render time. And I think this can also just be solved by like some light blockers or something like that. Maybe I'm gonna add one. And then definitely this tree needs branches and a canopy. So I'm still going to do that. I'm going to do that now. So yeah. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to select this canopy over here, and I can just duplicate it. I can rotate it a little bit, and I can even sculpt on it. Like, it's easier if the displacement modifier is off. Interestingly enough, you can even have the geometry nodes enabled and sculpt on the mesh, and you can immediately see the results of the geometry nodes as you're sculpting on it. This is really useful. I generally like that you can use edit mode and sculpt mode in combination while having modifiers visible. And that is a really strong point of Blender, just being able to interactively work with complex or also simple geometry nodes and shader setups, and yeah, still work kind of in real time. Okay, so this will just cast a bit more shadows. So this tree, where is it? It's this one. I'm gonna add another canopy. Just one more. Right over here on top of this tree. I'm going to make these a bit more dense, to be honest. Like that. Okay, and then this tree needs some branches. Let's see. I'm going to zoom in here just to get a better view. Which tree is this? It even already has a branches collection. Hold on. This is not the... Oh, what? This is not supposed to happen. Okay. I need to move this one back into the collection up here. More trees. And this one needs its own. So, let's see. I'm gonna create a new collection over here. Just call this BG oak.017. Gonna move this one in and add another collection over here, which is just 17 branches. And now in this collection, I can start adding some more branches. So let's just add one right here. And I'm going to add the third variation, like this. That should be good. I wonder if I even need more, to be honest. This is already giving quite some leaves, potentially. Yeah, I might just try this. And then I can go into branches over here, duplicate this, and call this... actually, I can just also press F2 to rename something. Call this... What was it? 17? I think it was 17. Yeah, and then use 17 branches as the target collection. And I can just snap it to this tree, and there we have it. I have some more leaves right over there. I see some more questions. Does rendering require a high-end PC for these types of animations? Yes, kinda. Not necessarily. Like, you should definitely have like a kind of for rendering, especially with cycles, you need pretty good specs to render something efficiently. It kind of depends on also how much RAM your render needs. If you have a lot of assets scattered around like we do, that's going to fill up the RAM quite a bit. So that's something you need to keep in mind. For Spring, we were very conscious about that constantly because we only had a certain amount of RAM available for the final rendering. but yeah, I also, for example, don't render on my laptop because I know my laptop can't handle any of this. Question from Falk. For the background in the very back, will you guys use a matte painting? Probably not. We usually don't have that much in the far background, and if we do, it's a bit inconsistent in terms of lighting, so maybe the best way to have something that can be more, like, react more to the scene, it's less effort to just duplicate a bunch of trees and have those a bit more lower res. We did that in Spring too, like a lot of the backgrounds that we have, even the mountains and all of that, that is not a matte painting, that is really just actual geometry with a lot of trees scattered around, but the trees are made so efficiently that it's really just planes with textures on them. But it's still 3D. None of it is a matte painting. And at least here we have the luxury that everything is a deep forest, so we don't really need to have that much effort put into the far background. Anyway, let me check the rendering again. There's like parts over here that need a bit more work. Here in the far background. I think I would like to, let's see, I would like to put some more rocks there, for example. Where is that? I can place a 3D cursor and just get a better idea of where something is. Over here, this spot. Let me just grab a rock, and move it with snapping enabled. Like one rock for over here. And one rock for right here. Just to fill in the space a little. Disable snapping. And then also add some more ferns. Like that. What about here? That one is still a bit sparse. I can add another fern right there. But I can also just scatter some more bushes to fill in the space. I'm gonna hide Ellie, because that space could also still... I'm gonna add a bush right here. Just to block that path as well a little bit. There we go. There's still some ground visible in general. I don't want it to be completely filled with bushes, but at least have it in a way where we don't actually see some of the ground just ending over here. Like that. Perfect. Okay, then I think the next thing I should do is really just kind of focus on well, the ground more, but also focus a bit more on the chat. What's going on there? How do you manage your LODs to optimize your scene? Do you use Decimate or some other technique? Typically we don't use LODs, or if we do, it's a bit of manual work. Like then we just have different variations of an asset. But since cycles can generally handle a lot of geometry, and especially if it's instanced assets, there's not really much benefit to using LODs. Or at least we are able to manage. LODs would be nice if they could be supported more. I did that, it's still not working. Sorry, I forgot. What was the question? Okay. I see a question, where do you get the tweak tool? Well, you can find it in the toolbar right here. Okay, let's go back into the camera perspective. So I'm actually going to go back into the other scene because I want to detail the ground a bit more from this perspective. So I'm gonna hide basically everything that is just related to the tops, like the tree tops and stuff like that, the branches, because now I really want to focus more on the ground. I already scattered some grass, and what this does, it really just checks for a vertex group over here, which is called grass, over here, and scatters grass in those areas. If I look at, let's see. Oh, I actually don't have the... I actually don't have the render anymore. I'm going to open it up here. It's like somewhat recent. The grass is good, but it's still missing something. That is the moss. Also, I still need to manage the grass a bit better along the edges. And I think the way I'm going to do that is, let's hide the grass for a moment. I'm going to select one of these ground objects and then Shift G and then select everything in the same collection. And I know I put all the grass surfaces in the same collection right over here in, like, it really pays off to organize your files in collections. So all of these objects are in the grass ground collection. So if I just select one of them, I can just Shift G by collection and select all of them. Now I will go into edit mode on all of these, and I want to have less grass along the edges in general. Luckily, I still have all of the edges selected, so I could just select more. Sadly, I don't have a shortcut for that right now. Or actually, I do? No, I don't. There we go. We can remove these. Remove. Now, if I go into weight paint mode, oh, well, I just went into weight paint on all of them, which doesn't work. It actually didn't work. Maybe it did. I'm gonna bring the grass back. Yeah, it does start scattering less grass along the edges. Huh. Oh, I think I know what went wrong. I did this on one object, but not on all of them. So I can just remove. Switch to this object over here. And remove these as well. Just get rid of the grass along the edges. Because on the edges, I'm just going to have the moss. I think if I want to scatter some grass specifically along the edges, I'm going to do that very consciously, very intentionally. But not right now. So let's just remove this. Perfect. Ah, okay. It's still happening over here as well. Yeah, come on, remove. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to add the moss. So for that, I will first hide the grass. I don't want to see that. And I'm going to enable the moss. And it doesn't actually appear. This is dangerous. Oh, I know why. It tries to scatter the moss, but there's no vertex group called moss, so it doesn't know where to scatter it. See some more questions. How to enable diffuse texture Mocap in the viewport? Diffuse texture Mocap. Well, I'm not sure if I understand the correction. I understand the question well, because like if you want to see the diffuse texture, you can set the viewport visibility to texture, and it will show you the active texture. Diffuse texture, that's something very specific, and I think that is something you would rather want to do in Eevee. And Mockaps are generally just used for lighting, so it's like, yeah, that's a bit hard to do. Mockaps are really just like projected onto your surfaces based on the surface curvature. It doesn't actually have texture information, or at least shouldn't have. Is that Blender 2.8 you're using? No, it's 3.0. Yeah. Did you create the geo nodes being used here, or do you have people to do that for you? Well, that's not how I would describe it, but yeah. Andy Guralczyk and Simon Thomas mainly were responsible for the geometry nodes. I am merely abusing them. Well, the geometry nodes. Okay. So let's see. I want to go, for example, into this object and add a vertex group. Let's try this. This is for grass right now, but I want to add a new one and call that moss. Moss. And then paint on it and see what happens. There we go. Moss starts to appear. And this is not even all the moss. This is fairly little compared to the intended resolution. So that's why I'm actually going to disable this and paint on this in a bit more of a controlled way. So I want to let's actually add more moss in patches, especially around the edges. I don't want the intersections between these objects to be that visible. Like that. Turn down the strength a bit. And I want to have a lot of moss along the edges of these islands. There we go. And I'm going to test that in a moment, how that looks. There we go. Okay, that should work. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. And then I'm going to use these two as sort of a test drive for how this looks. Let's see. Okay, let's leave it at that, and then let's just quickly enable the moss. See how it looks. Okay, start scattering the moss over there. Yeah, it's pretty much what I want. And then later on, I mean, this intersection between the grass plane and the rocks will not stay the same. The rocks will also get some materials. They will be further defined, and the grass will along the edge get a bit of a displacement, so we can get a bit more variation along the edge, but still have it kind of cartoony. That's at least the idea. Now, I want to really just render this part specifically. So I'm gonna draw a render border, and render this real quick. Some more questions. I was sad about being an environment artist, but seeing your lives is... Oh, no, it crashed. Why? Knockbridge. But seeing your lives, I became happy about. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. How can we make graphics like that of Minecraft? Well, I think geometry nodes might be actually really useful for that, because it lets you scatter blocks much more easily. And then you can define like where certain blocks should be placed. So I think, I'm sure you can do something like that. Hi, I tried testing for production pipelines with Blender scene linking using the ID data. Can you get any procedural Blender pipeline guide to work simultaneously with a team artist? What? Scene linking. Can you get any procedural Blender pipeline guides? Sorry, it's like a very deep question, and I don't think I fully grasp what you mean. Scene linking. Well, I mean, we also in our production are generally using scene linking a lot. For the for lighting, for example, like we link in different scenes. For example, the animation. Like we get the animation from the animation file and the animation scene, but then also the set specifically for... Hold on. I would actually have to look up some specific production files for that. But linking scenes is generally something we use a lot. It's not a very... sorry. Yeah, that's not... probably answering your question. Procedural Blender pipeline guide. Maybe I'm hung up on the word procedural because I understand something very different from that. Let's see. How much do you trust autosave? A lot. Autosave is actually running, working pretty well in Blender. I have it set to save every 2 minutes. And whenever something crashes, I can recover a lot of work, but I also tend to save a lot. I'm using subsurface modifier for most of the 3D modes. 3D modes? Well, I mean, the subsurface modifier, it has a specific purpose. I don't need it for every mode, so I could just like turn it off from time to time. Let's see. Sir, are you creating that mushroom creature? It is very cute, and I like that when I'm seeing on stream. I don't get the full question, but yes, I sculpted the sprites as well, and they were retopologized by Angela, Jeanette, and shaded by Simon Thomas. Like, there's a lot of teamwork going on. Here we go. Okay, I'm gonna try this one more time to just render this, but I'm gonna turn down the density this time. So 20,000 is maybe a bit too much. It was not even rendering it. Why did it crash? Let's see. Render. Let's see. I just want to see if it works well on that specific spot? And if yes, I don't need to render that much to test it. I can just repeat the same on all the other ground elements and then just keep going from there. Okay, now it's actually rendering. Are you going to animate characters on live stream? I want to see how to do it. It would be nice to have more live streams with various other tasks that we do for the film production, but right now I'm the only one live streaming, but if you're interested in animation tutorials or even shading tutorials, the other members of the team are actually making some great tutorial content on the Blender Cloud, which you can access there. Oh my... Now I know why it crashed. Why is it doing that? It's actually rendering... It's actually rendering the layout. Okay, now let's try this again. And then, it, like, the layout itself is already a lot of RAM that needs to be loaded in, but only because Hjalti forgot to not put subdivision surface modifiers on every single object. Well, it can happen. If you're always working with simplify on, it's something that you're not very much aware of. Another question. We are using Blender in my current workplace, but most of artists are from Maya backgrounds, so we are trying to find a way to create something like a Maya pipeline to work in a team. Well, that shouldn't be too difficult. I mean, if you're... So they come from a Maya background, but are they actually... Like, are you using Blender as your main pipeline tool? Because that's definitely different. But, I mean, I would say, like, the Blender Animation Studio is living proof that you can make a pipeline around Blender and actually make a film. But even other studios, like Tangent Animation, they made a feature film using Blender and having a pipeline that integrates it with other software. Creating live that mushroom creature on YouTube, I see someone say. Sorry, I don't get it. I see the question pop up multiple times now. How can we get the tweak tool? You can find it in the toolbar. It's the very first tool in the toolbar. It might be nested in like let me show you. Hold on. Like, if you have the toolbar over here, you can click and drag, or like click and hold, and it will show you more tools, and there's the tweak tool. I see someone say, I'm curious about the file structures. Have you explained this in this stream? More in the previous one. If you're interested in still watching that, you can check that out. Okay, so I think this is working kind of well, but it is a lot of moss. I actually, like, let's save this. I actually want to check out on the cloud how this compares to the mushroom growth set. Not now. So I'm going to the Blender Cloud, and over here I just quickly go into the gallery because we have that render of the mushroom growth. Sets, mushroom growth. There we go. This is kind of what I am referencing a bit. I think I should go a bit lighter on the moss, but I can't completely tell right now because I'm not actually using the final materials. So who knows? Let's see, I'm just going to dial it a bit more down. Switch between different objects. Have a little bit less moss. And also add some more moss on other objects. Especially along the edge. This is something I really want to do. Come on. Also, I should only really add moss where necessary. So, let's see. Only a little bit over here. Go back into this object and add a little bit more over here. Okay. I see a question. What hardware are you using? You can find some more hardware specific stats in the description. This is not the typical computer I use for work, but it is good enough for this sort of work. Let's see. Also the question, how long does it take to complete a project like this? It varies. I mean, this project will be done in the end after 1.5 years of work. But the same amount of time was really necessary for spring as well. And there we had a smaller team. See. Yeah, this also needs moss. And this object as well. I think that should be pretty much okay. And the same thing really on this side. There needs to be moss here as well. Oops. Ah, come on. Ah. Rotating around like crazy. Aha, this one also needs a lot more moss. Very much in the foreground. This one as well. This one not so much. Okay, that should cover the moss. There's actually another thing I wanted to do, and that is where usually I use this workspace over here, which I just call organizing. I need to split the set into two parts, the left side and the right side. Right now it is really just one. So what I'm going to do is I will go over here and call this right side. And then over here another one called left side. And I'm going to first off like move everything over here to the right side. So I'm just going by screen right. Actually I'm going to call this north side because that's what it actually is. This is the south side. So now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call this ground.south. This dot south I'm going to copy because I'm going to use this a lot. Trees. Oh, come on. Trees dot south and bushes dot south. As well as why is it okay? Rocks dot south and plants dot south. This is dot north, and I will copy paste this onto all of these collections as well. Now I got the rocks over here. Dot north. Ah, come on. Dot. And ground grass dot north. Now let's select all of these and deselect this side. If I can. Why can't I do it? Why can't I deselect? That was weird. Okay. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to have, this is why I have two outliners over here. It's so I can actually more reliably move stuff between two sides. So I can just hide this real quick. Hiding is a good way of saving a selection. And now I can create two more collections over here and call this Chasm Rock dot south and ground grass dot south. And now let's bring this back, unhide it, and move this over here. Now let's select all of the objects in this collection, deselect the, come on, why doesn't it do it? Deselect the right side, and then I have all of this selected. I can just move it over here between editors, between outliners. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide the south side, the collection in general, because then I see what has already been moved over to the other side. Makes it easier to manage. Also some more questions. What is the difference between Blender 2.93.1 and Blender 3.0 Alpha? So far very little. There's like features in development, but they are going to get more developed over time. Right now there's only some experimental features like overrides, the asset browser, and some other general experimental features like sculpt Vertex Colors. Does Blender Studio only make animations? Would it not be totally rad to do something else too? There have been some other side projects, and I mean, the Blender Studio is also making other things like educational content, other short video formats. There was at once a video game called Yo Frankie, and It's like various things. We're also publishing like art books and stuff like that. So there's plenty to do. Well, publishing, making. There's one art book. What is it you are making? I'm making a set right now for the film production of Sprite Fright. What is the shortcut to deselect with the box selector? Yeah, it's supposed to work with holding down Control, but I don't know why it is not working. That was really weird. Now, this is interesting. I can like select one of these trees, and then I can immediately see what tree is what collection it is part of, and now I can just move this one over to the other side. This one also move it over to the other side. What about this one? Also move it to the trees. I can hide these. They're not part of the set. They're props. More trees. So this one is also part of the south side. I'm going to make another collection over here, which is also called more trees dot south, and push it in here. Same thing for this one. No, that's actually oak 5. This also goes in here. Perfect. That covers the trees. Then I have more stuff like the bushes. Okay, so I can just select all of these by collection, and then I have all of the bushes selected, and then deselect all of this. Then I have these, and I can just drag them over to the bushes south scene, south collection over here. Then there's the rocks. I can just select one of the rocks, Shift G, select all by collection, deselect all of the rocks that I don't want to move over, and then I'm just left with these. I can open the collection, drag these over. I mean, what I could also do is, hold on. I could also, for example, if I want to move all of these ferns, I could just press M and then move to collection. But I like to do this rather with the 2 outliners, because then I can have the stuff much, like there's a lot more information here, and I can very easily have 2 hierarchies visible and very quickly move stuff between them. Over here I really need to go through the entire hierarchy step by step by step by step, and that can be quite exhausting. Let's see. Aha. Okay. So I can just select all of these and just move them over to the plants. That south collection over here. It's just bracken dot south. There we go. But here's the thing. Oops. So now I have this separated into a north and a south side. Pretty well separated, actually. The only things that are still missing are the treetops. Ooh, I need to do those. Damn it. So I can go to the south side over here, trees. Treetops north. Over here, treetops dot south. By the way, with if you have something selected and press dot while looking in the outline, it actually goes directly to what you're seeing. Oh, I'm still missing the branches collection. Am I? No, I'm not. Sorry, this is just really a little bit of reorganizing, but I don't want to have this not organized, because then it would be pretty difficult to manage this set later on. Okay, but I think I actually got it right now. So now if I actually look at the set, just hide this, this is unnecessary. I have it separated into a north and a south side, and I can just switch between them. This is really important because later on, this will make it really easy to have it separated, because there's going to be shots where we primarily see the south side and not the north side. So it just makes it a bit more manageable. But this also still needs to be done. Which branches are over here? So this. Oh, damn it. I think I'm actually going to unlink these branch collections. They are basically just linked versions anyway. The branches are primarily part of the trees. I just made that extra collection so I can very easily hide them. But this should be good. Yeah, north and south side. So I can just have both of these visible, then the props in the center, the characters. There we go. What else? Now, I still have a bit of time. So I would like to use that. So far, whenever I rendered something in the viewport or with just pressing render, oh no, it's actually loading the kernels. I didn't mean for that to happen. Damn it. I don't know why Blender is doing that twice. Damn it. So this is just like loading the render kernels. That's something Blender does when you use it for the first time. But it also happens every time you update Blender, which we're doing every day. And that's essentially the same as using Blender again for the first time. It needs to load all the render kernels again. And this takes a bit of time, so that's a bit of a shame. But that gives me a bit of time to check out the chat. How are you so calm? Is there something I should be worried about? I love that message. How many days will it require to learn Blender? Well, I mean, depends on what your definition is of learning Blender. I haven't learned everything in Blender yet, and I've been using it for 10 years. You are never... I would say like within a couple months, you can already get up to speed to do some really, really good stuff in Blender. So from there on out, it's really just you learn more and more. I see someone who wants to have an Agent 327 full-length movie. Well, that is the plan, actually. Eventually, that project will be kicked off completely, and it will be the first feature film production. So how are library overrides holding up in production? Any pain points? Yeah, library overrides are still a bit buggy. There are some issues that need to be figured out, but within just a couple months, a lot has happened, and it's actually coming together pretty fast now. They're already pretty useful. You can use them, but it is also very regular that we just open a file and the animation has exploded. So anything can be reverted to like like, we don't lose work if overrides decide to not work like they should be, but that does mean it is all still in development. It needs a bit of more time, a bit more testing, so I can't really recommend anyone to use them right now. We have the advantage in our production that we have the developers like Bastian Montenegro. Wow. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I only now noticed. But yeah, we have the developers right here who are helping out with developing the features. We give feedback, we test them, but that means if something breaks, they're also immediately there for help, which is amazing. But if you're using the features on your own, then you are also on your own. You don't have that support, sadly. Not for in-development features, at least. How many monitor screens you use? Usually 2. And do you use sculpt Vertex Colors for painting sculpts? And any idea when it will be official? Yes, I use it a lot, but I don't know when it will be official. There's still quite a bit of work to be done and integrating it properly with the rest of Blender, even though it is already working. Let's hope for the best. Okay, so I wanted to render this, right? Which ends up in something that looks a bit more like this. There we go. But I want to bring the materials back, and for that I'm going to remove this override, which I have here. Override, clay. I'm going to get rid of that, and now if I actually render this, it will look instead like this. With a lot of missing materials, some materials which need a bit of work, and some objects which don't have any UVs, which means the materials don't work. But this is already giving a much better idea of what I need to do. Actually, I'm gonna try something. I have this sphere down here, which is really just holding the material that I was using to override everything with. And I'm going to instead create a UV checker material. Let's see. I'm going to split this and show a shader editor and add a texture. Okay, just an image texture. There we go. Create a new one, and I'm going to make that a color grid. That is 2K resolution, called color grid. No alpha, just color grid. Okay. Based on the UVs, I'm going to plug that in. And now if I would render this, it should actually display the color grid. No, it won't, because I haven't assigned the material yet. Come on, there we go. Yes, I would like to see this everywhere. I'm actually going to plug it into the emission. Then it's actually going to glow. And now I want to see what happens if I override everything in the scene with that material. I have never done something like this before, or never used the override like this before, but this could be really useful. Let's actually see. And now I render. Let's wait for a bit. Aha! Now I see all the UVs. This is sadly only working for cycles. And I should also open these up, these collections, and hide some of the elements, like for example the moss. Like that should just be hidden. Actually, it doesn't hide it. It's weird. And the treetops, like the canopies, that also just needs to be hidden. Okay, rendered. Come on. You can do it. There we go. Is all open source what you guys use for sound in your projects? Well, with sound, I'm not quite so sure, to be honest. Could you share your light setup? Well, I mean, that's not anything special. It's really just a bunch of like world lighting, just blue, and then one sun lamp mostly. It's something quite temporary. How do you disable textures in rendering? I basically overrid all the materials with just a simple gray material. How many crashes do you face in a day? A lot. Although mostly on this recording computer, which is kind of sad. Usually when I work, I don't have to deal with it that much. Okay, so I can already look at this and see that any roots and branches that I extruded out need to have their UVs updated, so the trees need to be updated. The ground also generally doesn't have any UVs or very stretched ones, so that needs to be fixed. But any other asset is really just scattered around, so it should be fine. I'm going to remove this material override. Okay. So let's just go through this. I'm going to just enable the ground. Like this. And I'm going to make a new workspace for UV editing. Reorder this to the back. There we go. Wow. Let's get rid of the fade inactive geometry. Okay, for this, I think I could really just unwrap it like that. That should be good to go. But actually I would just like want to project it from the view. And then Control A. Why is Control A not working? Average island scale. Oh, and pack islands is Control P. There we go. Okay. So I could just hide this. You project from view. Actually, I'm going to select all of these in the all of these with the same material. Oh, Shift L, the same material. Go into edit mode and project all of these from the same view, like this. Then at least they have the same scale. And then I can pack them like that. Yeah, just averaging them out a little bit more. There we go. Okay, that should be good enough. So that's for the grass. And then for these guys, I'm just gonna also select them based on material, all of the cliff faces, but these I will just unwrap, to be honest. Just unwrap. I think that should be good enough. Maybe I need to arrange them a bit differently so they're all facing upwards, but I think that should be good for now. Okay, now that's for the UVs of those. The props should be fine. Okay. The trees. That's definitely important. But not all trees. There's like the more trees collection and the treetops. Those don't need UVs. They already have some. The moss already is taken care of. More trees. So only these. And over here also only the trunks, the branches also already have UVs and they're just linked in. So these need to be fixed. Okay, UV editing. Let's see. Yeah, this is a bit messed up. I see a question. Do you know if it's possible to sort my files first instead of folders first in the file browser? No, I'm not sure. Should we learn everything in Blender or some specific ones? Well, you can learn whatever you want, whatever you feel is most important. And you could do pretty much anything in Blender. That's why, like, of course, it's amazing to know everything in Blender, but that's not really the requirement. Let's see. I'm actually taking off the headphones for a moment. Just go to material view. I want to see what is actually happening to the material right now. But this means it's going to load the materials for a bit. Perfect. Yeah. Let's actually disable the subsurface modifier for edit mode. Clear those seams. This seam can just continue all the way up here. Mark seam. Let's unwrap this. Scale this down. Stitch it back to the rest. Like this. It's actually quite messy. Is UV editing and retopo hard? It kinda is, but it's not a lot to learn, to be honest. It is a bit, takes a bit of time, but it's a bit of a puzzle, but once you know how to work the puzzle, it's not that much. It's not that complicated, I would at least say, but it is a bit hard to get into it. Actually going to get rid of all of these pinned vertices. Just do this. Mark seam. And change this to live unwrap. Which means any changes that I do are immediately going to be visible in this editor over here. Let's see. Over here it's falling apart. Clear seam. Let's see. Mark seam. I don't know why it's black over here. I think I need to check the Vertex Colors. I think there's something used in the material that just makes it render black. So if I go to Vertex Paint, yeah, that's pretty much what I thought. It's the moss. Hold on. Here are Vertex Colors. Seams. Moss doesn't matter. Dark holes, that's the one. That's the one that makes it black. And then seams. Over here I can really just paint all of this down here in the same color. But I don't need to just paint it by hand. I can also just select all of this stuff, go to Vertex Paint, fill it in over here. Now once I have all of the seams and all the UV islands laid out, I can get back to that and paint in where the actual seams are. That's like just a vertex color layer that is being used for the materials. And it's trying to hide the seams in these patterns. Let's see. Yeah, this also needs to be unwrapped. Mark seam. Mark seam. There we go. I think this should be pretty much good to go. Yeah. So this tree has working UVs. One thing that is missing now is to align these much better. So I can just like select this UV island, rotate it, select this one, which is currently messed up because it doesn't have a seam over here. Okay. Let's try this again. I'll just rotate these. So that already looks better. Now what I can do is I can select everything. I'm gonna Shift G, select this, and select only the seams. Now I can go into Vertex Paint again, and paint all of the vertices that are part of a seam in black. With Shift K, I can just fill anything that is masked off. And now this means it will try to hide the seams by creating these like noises in here in the surface. Perfect. Now that's already working, so this tree is kind of restored, and now I would do this for pretty much every other tree. Apart from that, there was not much else to do. I'm going to go over the chat a little bit, and then maybe end the stream, because it's been already 2.5 hours as far as I know. Let's see. So how do you guys maintain correct textile density for all assets on the project? Would be cool to have some built-in tools for that. Well, yeah. I mean, it depends on like how much detail you actually need for any shot. Luckily we have a lot of the materials kind of be procedural, so we don't need to worry that much about how much density we can afford, because it's not very much tied to pixel density on the textures. So I can like zoom in here, and of course at some point it's going to fall apart, but the textures themselves are procedural, so we can add some more detail if we needed to, or add more resolution so the displacement can be better. But usually if we build these assets to be at a certain distance, so like somewhat in the background probably, but if we have any of these surfaces more in the foreground, we make very specific assets for those. And those are very shot specific, and those get to have more detail. We don't make highly detailed assets for everything and then make LODs of those. We make assets with only the amount of resolution and only the amount of detail that we need. And if there's like a couple or a few that need more detail, those can be specifically tailored towards the shot and towards the camera angle. That saves a lot of time. Texture. That's procedurally generated, but I can't really go into the shading nodes because that's made by Simon, and it is quite dense. Just creating that bark weave over here is its own node tree. And I mean, Simon loves to create these textures himself, just with nodes, and I do see totally the benefit of that, but I cannot dissect this, I'm sorry. How long did it take to you to perfect your skills in Blender? I'm still at it. Well, there's some skills which I think I'm pretty good at, but there's so much else to learn. It never ends. Especially with, I mean, set dressing is something that I am not that confident with, but I'm learning. But yes, let's see. Some more questions. Why are you using Shift D instead of Alt D? Well, if you saw me like duplicating instances around, it doesn't make a difference there if I use Shift D or Alt D, because both is just duplicating an empty that has a collection of a linked asset inside of it. So it's really just the same thing then. But in terms of these trees, I would like to have them, like if it's an object that is really in the scene, I want to duplicate it with Shift D so I can like edit them individually. But if it's an asset that is scattered around, it's better to have an instance of that and duplicate that. But that is just a very specific workflow for set dressing. There's different use. It's sometimes more useful to use Alt D for like meshes, but that's like for specific tasks. But in here, like if I can like go back into, hold on. I'm actually going to save this. Go to Mocap, bring back everything else. Like, if I look at this, like these trees, they're just meshes. They're duplicated with Shift-D. I can like edit them, but other assets like these ferns, they are instances. They only exist, they only have object mode. And if I go in here in instancing, they are actually just an empty. You can see these empty axes over here, and they show you the collection over here, environment plants bracken.2. If it's empty, it's really just an empty. And that's basically how most of the assets are being used in sets like that. But I think that's pretty much it. I'm gonna end it here. So thank you very much for joining. I hope this was not too dry and was somewhat informative. And next time I will maybe show something else. Let's see what's going to be next. Maybe UV editing. That would be fun. So see you then. Bye.